Hello, everyone. Welcome to News Across the Galaxy. As always, thank you for joining us, particularly today for a very special episode. Here in Los Angeles, we have been blessed with some of the greatest sportscasters across various sports, including Vin Scully, Chick Hearn, Bob Miller, and Ralph Lawler. If you grew up in the LA area and tuned in via radio or TV, you still remember their voices as they chronicle some of the most memorable moments in sports history. Yet, there is another distinguished voice that is beloved and instantly recognizable by the Los Angeles Galaxy family. Joe Tutino is as humble as he is gifted, a true gentleman and a consummate professional on the mic. As he narrates the beautiful game with dulcet tones of his voice, he has provided the soundtrack to many of the most unforgettable moments in Galaxy history. Before we begin, thank you for joining us, Mr. Tutino. Having you join us on News Across the Galaxy is a real treat and something that we have been looking forward to with increasing anticipation.
Well, guys, thank you very much. Those are legends. Those guys are immortal, and it's very kind of you guys to say that and include me in that group. But give me 44 more years, and we'll go from there, huh?
Hey Joe, I'm gonna start with the obvious question. What inspired you, or did anybody inspire you to look for a career in broadcasting? Edgar mentioned Chick Hearn, Vince Scully. Like myself, Joe Tutino. So anybody in you growing up that you watched or listened to that made you want to follow this career?
I didn't think I was going to be in broadcasting until after high school. Honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do. Honestly, in high school, until I got injured in sophomore year and decided that I was going to be a sports writer. Went into the journalism class, became the sports editor, and thought I was going to be a writer out of high school. And I just wasn't getting the answers I wanted from the universities, local universities, and the community colleges, because I want to go from here to there in a hurry. I wasn't into doing more than what I already did in high school. I already took trigonometry in high school. I didn't need that to go where I wanted to go, and so I wanted to find the straight line. And I was just sitting in my parents' home the summer after I graduated from high school, and I saw a commercial for Columbia School of Broadcasting, and I said, "Wow, when I'm watching sports, I tend to see it well on TV and in the stadium or wherever I am, so I'm going to do that." And my family wasn't very happy about it, honestly, because, an immigrant family, you go to work, you start making money, or you're really going to be something, I don't know, a doctor, an architect, something, and not a broadcaster. They were okay with me being a writer, but changing that to broadcasting, you have a family that speaks broke English. They're saying, how are you going to be a broadcaster? And so that's really the direction I went in. In terms of all the great names you guys mentioned, I grew up watching them, of course. I mean, in fact, Bob Miller and Nick Nixon, they used to simulcast in the late 80s and into the early 90s, and we had the Kings on my original station, Extra Sports 690, where I started. And I was one of their board op engineers at the time for a couple of seasons there. And they used to simulcast TV and radio, and they would switch off periods doing play-by-play, radio and television. That's how it was until they split that broadcast and went in a different direction. So I got a good dose of some of the greatest. Chick Hearn I got to meet when I got into radio, and certainly watching the Lakers on television. Vince Scully is Vince Scully. Everybody wants to be Vince Scully, but nobody can be, because he is one of a kind. Nobody will ever be Vince Scully. I know you guys need to know that, because number one, you'll never have somebody like him again, and number two, the industry unfortunately doesn't allow it to have just one broadcaster in the booth, and so that's a little bit different. But I grew up around guys, in my hometown of San Diego, and soccer was a gentleman by the name of Randy Hahn, who had a very energetic delivery. And you can listen to on radio, and you can see the game on radio, and also on television. He brought that same energy, and that would be the guy that kind of affected me as a 14, 15-year-old kid. But in terms of when I went the broadcasting route, I didn't say I want to be on like this guy or that guy, or Everybody wanted to be Chris Berman in the late 80s and the Booyahs and all that other stuff that was going on with ESPN. And I just never really was that person. I was more of trying to bring you an honest delivery, clear. My voice always projected as a child, always going forward. And that's kind of, eventually you build a style and you go from there.
Was there a specific event, or you mentioned a lot of different people, but was there a specific person maybe that made you realize that you had a future as a sportscaster?
No, there wasn't, because I didn't know what I was doing. Honestly, I was 18 years old getting into the business. I was 19 when I was first hired. There were guys that I had a lot of respect for, people that were around me. When I first started, it was a news station. So I have a news background as a news producer for our morning shows, as well as, you learn how to write for copy on air and things like that. And then you learn from them, some of the guys that are around you, how to deliver news and how to write news and so forth. And when we flipped onto sports and became an all sports station, it was basically the second all sports station in the country. None of us really knew what was going on. We thought how it should be, and we used whatever talents we had that we brought in from being in news, and we applied it to sports. We were all sports fans, but we all made a bunch of mistakes along the way. Fortunately for us, we figured it out within a couple of years, and we were successful as a station. But not really. I mean, I was teamed with Jim Rome. We were together for 5 years. His personality, his delivery, much different than mine, but we made a great team together, and we put together a very good show, from our nighttime slot to our midday slot to our national show that we created. So I didn't take much from Jim other than being who I am and what I am on the air and what I am off the air. I try to be the same person. I'm not one that has shtick. Other guys have shtick, and I never felt that was me, because I don't think I can pull it off on a consistent basis. So I'd rather be myself, because I know I can be myself. At least I know that.
It's interesting that you bring up Jim Rome, because when I think of Jim Rome and you, it's like night and day.
Yeah. Well, Jim wasn't anti-soccer until he and I split. And in fact, during the 1994 World Cup, nobody covered the World Cup better than we did on our show. Basically because of me, because I love the game, and I would bring that to the show as well. And unfortunately, you have to think about something here, though. On a national scale, the U.S. national team has not lived up to expectations. The Lakers go into a season, you expect a championship. The Dodgers go into a season, you expect the championship. The Galaxy go into a season, you expect the championship. Well, unfortunately, on the world scale, the U.S. men's national team hasn't reached that level yet. And I think when you do a national show and you back that type of team, when there are a bunch of fans that are Germany fans, Italy fans, Brazil fans, France fans, England fans, even though they haven't won in 2 generations, you put yourself in a bad situation. So rather than having to deal with those daggers all the time, you just flip it around and say, we suck. And you go from there. I mean, we did it with NASCAR for many years until he figured out that NASCAR was an important audience for him.
I don't know if Eddie and Tony remember, but I remember that real vicious rant that that Jim went on regarding the U.S.'s loss to Iran. And I remember listening to it live, and oh my God, whew, it got me heated. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but, and I'm not trying to defend Jim here. The United States of America, we need to step up. We need to be better. And there's nobody in soccer in the United States of America that on the men's side is not going to agree with that. We don't like hearing it. We don't like somebody telling us the situation, especially on a radio station or a television station that is inside our country, talking to us. But it is a hard reality right now, and we're trying to find our way. Now, having said that, in 2002, we reached the type of expectations that I have for the U.S. men's national team on a regular basis. The women, they keep on raising the bar for everybody, and someday hopefully sooner than later, we'll have enough men to fill out rosters to a point where all 23 spots will be competed for by multiple players, as opposed to the final spots. These are the guys. And I want the U.S. to win more than anybody else. I'm right there with everybody. It's just, to me, I'm an Italian American, as you guys know. I mean, if the U.S. plays Italy, I have my U.S. shirt on, like right now. The flag is on my shirt, and that's how it works for me. But I think it's important for us to be honest about where we are right now. Not happy about it, but honest about it. I think they're going in the right direction. You guys see the players that are playing abroad. You see the players that are being developed from Major League Soccer and are going abroad. We are in a better place than we were 5 years ago. Unfortunately, we haven't had enough games and the international level to show it. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit since we're on the U.S. topic. What is more important to you, Joe? Do you think it's more important for more American players to go play abroad, or do you think the domestic product has to strive in order for us to be successful in the world stage?
I think it's a difficult situation. I think it's an individual question. If Christian Pulisic began his career here in the United States, I'm not sure he would be given the credit he is getting today at Chelsea. Because, again, unfortunately, the media that covers our sport in this country won't give credit to the league that we have right now for developing the players and to the highest level. And you say, well, you have to go play abroad. You have to be there. You have to go do it there before you're somebody. And, okay, then we have to send some of these guys over there to do it there to be somebody. Having said that, not everybody should go abroad, because we've had plenty of guys go abroad and rot on benches and ruin their careers. Fortunately for Sebastian Lletget, he came back to the United States and made himself a U.S. national team player. So what he got from there as a youth at West Ham and brought it back as a professional here with the Galaxy, that has worked out. So that's why I say it depends on the individual, where we can develop them. Think about it this way. We're not trying to develop goal scorers that fans may buy tickets for to watch them play at MLS games. We tend, if you watch social media and all the banner that is on social media, and even the reports of the rumors of who's coming to Major League Soccer, they're all guys who have made names for themselves at other places. We never talk about, here's Joe Smith, and this guy's 20 years old, and this guy's great. He's a great American. He's going to go play for the LA Galaxy, and he's going to be their target forward. And at that point, it's just a perception situation for these guys right now that we have to cycle on through, that the U.S. men have to cycle on through. I think the other example that I would bring you right now is, look what's happening with the U.S. women's players. They are the cream of the crop, and they are the ones that are now playing in Europe, because the European teams are saying, for us to become relevant on the women's side, we need Morgan. We need Rose, I forget her name, Lavelle. We need those players. And that's where we are on the men's side here. It's unfortunate. I hate it. I wish we were further ahead, but I think that's where we are right now.
Yo, Joe, going in at this pace, though, how long do you think before we reach those levels?
I don't know. It's hard to say, because I think what happened, if you look at 2002, we had a very good team. We thought we were going to be better in 2006, but then we realized we got a young team in 2006 and we had a veteran team in 2002, looking back on that. So we cycled on through. So right now, well, at that time, we were a country that we would cycle up, cycle down, cycle up and cycle down. And then we hit a bump in the road for a few years here, and we got embarrassed by not making it to the World Cup. And so we have to deal with that and overcome that. And now we've had a pandemic that has slowed that down. I think Greg Berhalter is making strides. I think he has brought in a style that he's making the United States better at what we can do. but actually a little more refined. Now we have to see them all come together. You know, Josh Sargent, Christian Pulisic. Who's going to play the forward? Is it going to be, you tell me, who's the target forward for the United States right now? Josie Altidore? It's a little long in the tooth now, right?
Yeah.
But if he's our best guy, you put him out there. That's where we are right now. We are just an unfinished product at every position. Having said that, they're coming. Look at the academy kids that are being built now. Look at the new academy system that the Galaxy is part of with Major League Soccer. We're starting to harvest this young talent, and now we're hopefully build the fruits that will bring us enough players to where we can, have the cream of the crop, as opposed to, I think we've been fragmented for a generation, to tell you the truth.
Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, we're fascinated about your career and how you got to be where you are today. And we had a conversation, I remember, before the season started. You were telling us about growing up, with, in your Italian family. And when you first mapped out your career, did you ever expect to be where you are today, working alongside Kobe?
Well, no. I thought I was going to be an indoor soccer play-by-play announcer because we didn't have an outdoor league. And I never had an idea that we'd have another outdoor league here, even though we had the 94 World Cup. You just didn't have a feel that we were going to have an outdoor league. And I think the first couple of years of Major League Soccer, in fact, probably the first 5 years of Major League Soccer, there was always thoughts that, okay, how long is this going to last? I grew up with the old North American Soccer League outdoors, and that was just like, okay, we're waiting for it to die, waiting for it to die. It died. Then we had to go, watch indoor soccer. All those players had to go play indoor soccer, and it was exciting for a time because there were very talented players playing in tight quarters, and it was an exciting game. And I grew up in San Diego, and we had a great team and kept on winning championships. But again, you got to understand, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, in the back of my mind, if my team didn't win a championship, I didn't think they were going to come back. So that was kind of the feeling of soccer in this country. When I went into broadcasting, there was an indoor league. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to be an indoor soccer play-by-play guy because there was no outdoor soccer from a national perspective. And that was my first job as play-by-play. I was the play-by-play announcer for the Anaheim Splash at the Pond. At the time it was called the Pond. And I did a couple of years there. From there, that gave me an opportunity to work at Fox Sports World. From there, I met Rick Davis. We were doing the Italian League for Fox Sports World. And from there, the league got underway, MLS got underway, and I was being a pain in the butt to the LA Galaxy's ownership. Have them to hire me, and I was, league got underway in '96, so I was 26 years old. And Danny Villanueva, one of the owners there, was the one I was talking to, giving him a hard time. He allowed me to do the public address for the very first game. But they didn't have any English play-by-play on a regular basis, radio and television. There were one-off games for a little while, and then I was hired to do what was Galaxy Talk on my station in '97 and '98. And again, we were paired. Rick Davis and I were paired again to do that show, a weekly show every Saturday. We did about, 30, 35 weeks a year, something like that, and through the championship. And then in '99, finally, the Galaxy were in a position to where they were going to do all games on TV and radio. 10 games on TV, all games on radio. And I got an opportunity at that point to do the play-by-play again for the, beginning for the Galaxy and going through from there.
Okay. Since we brought it up, I was wondering if you could tell us about your childhood and growing up in a soccer family, and at a time when there was very little soccer on the airwaves or even in the newspapers.
Well, it was, I grew up watching Soccer Made in Germany, the 1 hour cut down show on PBS that they would show. And was it Toby Charles was doing the play by play. And Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. That's the name I would hear in my head all the time, because every week that game would be on, or they would be playing. We would watch that for an hour, and once in a while, along the public broadcasting channels, there would be, an Italian show that would show some of the Italian soccer. Very limited though. It was just a different situation. I mean, I grew up playing rec soccer. North Park Rec is where I grew up playing soccer, and my first team and our first league, we had the goalposts, but we had no nets. And my dad was a former fisherman, and my dad went down to the docks, I guess, went to a boat or whatever he did, and he brings home these nets and he cut them to size, and we put up fishing nets as goal nets, and that's what you did, and then you went from there, and and then your next team, you got a real uniform, and you're pretty excited about that, and you kind of go and you keep going. And for me, it just was I was a soccer kid first, an American football kid next, which I like to watch, of course. And those were the two sports that I really liked. And then eventually it was introduced to hockey. We had the Clippers in San Diego when I was a kid. They were not very good. They were driven out by the San Diego Sockers, who outdrew them 3-1. At the sports arena there. So that's how it was, in the early 80s. Things were a little bit different.
I got to ask though, Joe, since we're speaking about other sports and you're telling us about the fact that you like football too, what are your teams, man? We got to know.
Well, for 10 years, I was the executive producer of the Chargers games on radio. And of course, went through the Super Bowl the first time around with them. Into Miami and spent 11 days with them. I grew up a Chargers fan. I mean, that was my team, through Eric Coryell and all that stuff. And I know that I'm dating myself because you guys are thinking, Eric Coryell, what was that? The Chargers offense in the late 70s and the 80s was the best in the National Football League, and every offense you see today is built off of that basic architecture going forward. They changed the game. Having said that, unfortunately, my team let me down all the time. But fortunately for me, they were blue and gold, so I kept my colors.
Nice. And they followed you to the stadium.
They did. I wasn't very happy with them being in our stadium, but I understand what had to be done. And now they're off to their other stadium that's been built and opened up last night, and then good luck to them. I think they're 1-0. They beat Cincinnati yesterday, from what I understand. The Rams got the win as well. So the two American Football League teams are off and running.
You mentioned when you first started doing professional broadcasting, but do you remember the very first time you ever narrated any sporting event? And we're curious to know how that experience was for you.
Yeah, I was in broadcast school at the time, and it was an indoor soccer game. And I picked up 3 internships, one at the radio station that hired me, one at the soccer team, because I wanted to broadcast games, and so I felt that was my in. And the other one was the NBC television affiliate as well. And so I learned how to edit and produce and put together sportscasts on TV, newscasts for radio, and in my case, the opportunity to be with the team that I loved as a child, and an opportunity to call their names into a cassette deck. And that's how I critiqued myself when I was in school. I'd call a game. I mean, before the game, we would help set up the press box. There were no elevators in this arena. We would bring up these 19-inch TVs that had to weigh 200 pounds apiece, and you throw them up on your shoulders, and you keep on walking all the way up there, and you set it all up. And then I got the opportunity to call the games. And I had a little headset, and I had a tape deck, and I would be calling the games, and the media that was covering the games at the time, they were right in front of me, and they were kind of looking back at me because, again, I had a little knack of seeing a goal develop. The guys that were running or covering the game, they were just doing it because they were assigned to do it. They were not soccer writers. I mean, there was maybe one of the 5 guys that were there at the time, and those were, they were there like, oh, I got to cover soccer. And for me, I was excited to be there. And so, and so that was my first. That was it. It was indoor soccer. It was into a tape deck. It was part of my internship, and the person I was interning for, he would get a tape, and then the person I was going to school here in San Diego, the director of school, he'd get a tape, and they would both critique me along the way, and I was a screamer as a kid, and I'm still that screamer today.
Now that you mentioned that, you as you developed your own style, was there anybody that you looked to for inspiration?
From time to time, and he was nice enough to take a tape or two. It was, J.P. Dellacamera was doing indoor soccer at that time also, and I got a chance to meet him, and he would listen to a couple of games and give me some critique along the way. And, I got a chance to work with Randy Hahn. He ended up working at the same radio station I was at, and we had the games on our station, and so I worked with him and learned a little bit from him. A gentleman by the name of Lee Hamilton was the voice of the Chargers, and so I was able to be around him a lot. But there was never a situation to where I said I need to go shadow this guy or shadow that guy. It was more of just kind of taking it all in along the way, and I think that's kind of how I developed the style. It was more of taking a little bit from here, taking a little bit from there, the professionalism of Bob Miller and how he delivered a game, the smoothness of his delivery. Chick Hearn, the biggest Lakers fan around, he would praise them, and he would also tell them when they weren't playing well. Those are the things. I don't think I wrote them down. I said I have to be that way, but those are the people that may have influenced me along the way.
You've mentioned, people that are famous for not being what are called, homers. Mm-hmm. Like Vince Scully, Bob Miller, Chick Hearn. They were never homers. They were very fair and equal of the way they treated the home team and the visiting team. And is that something that you consciously made an effort to be like, I'm going to be impartial, I'm going to call it down the middle? Or was it something that, you constantly have to be like, okay, I got to be fair to both teams? Because, personally, I appreciate that. When I've been in, I've traveled a lot, and there's times when I'll go to like a sporting event or I'll listen to a sporting event in another state, and I hear like the broadcast, and they're going nuts over the home team.
Right.
And I'm like, oh wow, that's fine, but it sounds, it's not what I grew up with, and to me, it's a little jarring.
Yeah, I'll bring it back to why sports radio doesn't work well with soccer, is because the guys that were doing the talk shows didn't know anything about the sport of soccer, and therefore they could not be objective. Luckily for me, I played, and I could be at least objective enough. I was a 5'7" goalkeeper that was rather round, and you guys certainly know that when I was. But you can see the game, and when somebody scores on you or does something well, it's not necessarily because you made the mistake. And I think that's what I've always taken from this. Is if the opponent does something good and beats the other player, they did something good. They did a good job. And sometimes I'm not going to go jump out of the broadcast booth and be excited about it to a point where I'm going to pat them on the back, but you do have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge when a team is bossing the game. At least, also the fact is you guys aren't dumb. You guys know your game you love. And for me to say something that's untrue, well, at some point I'm going to lose my credibility with you. And that's most important, because otherwise, what I hate to hear is somebody said, I watched the game, but I turned the audio down because I just can't listen to those guys. And I see that all the time on social media. And I hope we can be good enough that we're not those guys.
That's okay. I'll say the names for you: Taylor Tolman and Storholder. But you know what? You said you're not. You do your best not being a homer, so that totally takes me out of the picture ever being a broadcaster, because I get a little too excited. But let me.
No, you can be excited. I'm excited about the Galaxy. Trust me. When they won the championship in 2014 on the final call, I kind of lost my breath, and I had to kind of pause a little bit to regroup myself. So it's good to be excited, and you should be excited about the team you broadcast for. I broadcast for LA Galaxy fans, and I know that we get national distribution these days with the ESPN Plus and all the other things that go on. But ultimately, it's Galaxy fans that are watching the Galaxy games, the ones that I do. And so I know my audience, and to know your audience is very important. It's just not to pee on their feet and tell them it's raining. You got to be honest with them also. because you're watching the game and if you think Christian Pavon should have taken the shot instead of passing it to Efrain Alvarez, and I said he did the right thing, well, maybe. But if I do it all the time, at some point you're going to say, okay, this guy is just, Pollyanna, and that's what you don't want to be. And unfortunately for me, the Galaxy has been such a great organization that they've always put a team on the field that puts us in a situation to where they have an opportunity for greatness.
And of course, the whole Galaxy universe loves you, and you're the perfect, role model to look up to. So, any advice to anyone that might be watching that wants to get into sports broadcasting?
I think you need to be hands-on. I think you have to learn everything behind the scenes, as you guys are doing now. I think you have to do as many games as possible. Put yourself in a position to put yourself, doing the tape decks. I mean, at some point you have to get to a point where you're not embarrassed by doing what you love. And that was me. I mean, I didn't care if somebody turned around and gave me a dirty look. I didn't care if, somebody was like, what are these guys doing behind a goal, calling a game that's not being broadcast anywhere? I didn't care about that, because the goal was for me to get better. And you only get better in broadcasting by broadcasting. You don't get better by taking a test. You don't get better by writing down the correct answers that some professor might, subjectively feel they're the correct answer. And that's how you guys were asking me, how do you build your style? You build your style by working and keeping on working and finding what fits into what you do. And you build your rhythm, and then you create that persona that you are.
That's sad.
I have a question for you. You've been with the LA Galaxy since 1996, when you were the public address announcer, like for the matches at the Rose Bowl. But are there certain aspects of 1996 and those first few wild years that make you feel nostalgic and you wish you could relive?
Well, I mean, 96 was great for me. For the first game, I was doing the public address, and the fact that, nobody expected to have 69,200 and whatever fans were in the building. I can tell you right now, they expected about 30,000. The building, the Rose Bowl was set up for that. As you guys remember, in 96, every stadium in Major League Soccer, certainly there were big facilities, but they were tarped down in a certain way. And the visual in my mind is always looking down to my right and noticing not stadium personnel, but the fans pulling the tarps off the seats. And in the right goal from where I sat in the press box, and that was weird, because I asked Danny Villanueva that night was sitting right next to me, because it was the first night and they wanted everything to go the way they wanted it to go, and I was asking him. I asked him. I said, "Well, how many fans do you expect tonight?" Because I expect about 30,000. I said, "Well, then why are the tarps being pulled?" And then it was just a pull, and then it was pull upon pull upon pull upon pull, until you're just wondering, you're thinking to yourself that maybe the fans are just decided they wanted better seats, at that point. It's like, what is going on? Because you go 30 to 60 to 69,000, 69,000 at the Rose Bowl looks good. It's not the 93, but it still looks good. And from what I understand, there were a bunch of people still outside that never got into the game. In fact, there was a massive crowd, I believe, through halftime that really had a hard time getting into the game. So that I take, the 12 wins out of the gate, 12 straight wins out of the gate. That I take from me for the first year. I loved being able to report on that as the only guy on the air talking soccer. So the few times I could crack the mic and talk about where the Galaxy were going to play and whether they won or not was fun for me. And the first championship game in '96, what they should have won, they were up 2-0 with 20 minutes to go, and they're playing. The field is underwater in New England at the time, which was Sullivan Stadium at the time. At whatever it was, the remnants of a hurricane, I believe it was, and they end up losing it. And the '98 team that scored so many goals, incredible team that should have won, and of course, unfortunately, they ran into the expansion club Chicago, and Chicago ended up taking the championship and knocking them out of the playoffs. There's a lot of them that come together. The early years were, it was like being on a trapeze without a net. It was, we did broadcasts that were really difficult to do. We simulcast them on TV and radio. We had producers and directors that didn't know anything about soccer. There were certain things that the league wanted us to do that had nothing to do with the game in the broadcast. And we just had to go down this list no matter what. At this point of the game, no matter what the storyline was of the game, we had to talk about this. Those are just some of the early things, the growing pains that we went through in soccer in this country, even though it had a long history. It just was kind of always in restart mode. And fortunately for us, and we didn't know this at the time, when they contracted the league to 12-10, well, we thought, okay, well, we're not going to make it past this. It was actually the best thing that could happen because they just galvanized the league. They galvanized the ownership group. Mr. Anschutz, I believe, owned the Galaxy, Colorado, New York,
DC United,
New York, and DC. Then the Kraft, Mr. Kraft, opened up with owning San Jose, but that flipped over to Mr. Anschutz as well. And so, we're here because Mr. A. Otherwise, we probably don't have a league. And having said that, we're also here for Robert Kraft and his contacts with television and the fact that Don Garber came in with his NFL roots to be able to say, this is what works in the NFL. This is how we're going to apply it over here. And we're going to go forward in this direction. And then I don't want to say the rest is history. The rest became history in 2007 when David Beckham came in.
Good time to bring up this question then. You once mentioned that LA Galaxy focused solely on a Latin American based audience. What do you think convinced the club to reach out and basically take into a broader audience into consideration?
I just think it was the way the ownership group was set up. Part of the ownership group had Hispanic broadcasting roots, and therefore they went in that direction. That was the easier route to get going on a consistent basis. I think there was a perception also that certain markets were American and certain markets were Latin, and other markets may be able to sprinkle an Italian over here. And we saw that in the early days of MLS and the type of players that they brought in and who played here and who played there and who played over there. That's not the case anymore, but that was the mentality of Major League Soccer 1.0 at the time. In terms of the flip over that happened with English broadcasting along with Hispanic broadcasting, that was just a matter of getting traction. The first route was we can get Hispanic broadcasting. We have a strong Latin community. We'll concentrate there, and then we'll be able to make some inroads into English broadcasting as well. I think that was kind of how it turned out to be. That's why the English broadcasting side, on my side, began with a talk show. Because you got to understand, a lot of English programmers, radio-wise, they ruffle their nose at soccer. There are no commercials in the game. How can we run these? We got so many commercials to run. They found every excuse possible to make it difficult for soccer on the English side. So that was what was happening at that time, and really all the way up to not too many years ago in this league, where you have on the English side, especially locally, we can't give up that programming time. We can't do this and we can't do that. Well, it's a bunch of BS. They're just a bunch of guys that don't like soccer. They might be baseball guys. They might be whatever,
Right. And pretty much, since this is another question I have for you, but you're pretty much beloved by the Galaxy community and the Galaxy in general.
I love you guys too. Thank you.
So, but we have to ask, man, has the Galaxy ever showed you any love by giving you your own rings?
I do have rings. I have all 5.
Nice.
I have all 5 of the rings. That was from day one. I mean, the Galaxy have shown me a lot of love along the way, and there's blue and gold blood in me, believe it or not. So yeah, they've shown me a lot of love, and they've taken care of me over the years, and I'm part of that family, thank goodness.
Sweet.
Do you ever bring out the rings and just put them on your hand and look at them? And
it's weird. I put them away. I did. I used to wear the ring, a championship ring, for opening day. However, over the last 6 years, all rings are too big for me now, by many sizes. They used to order me a size 15 ring. They don't fit. They don't even fit on my thumbs anymore. So, I have them in the boxes. I have them put away. Once in a while, when I'm rustling through things, I run into them and I'll open a box and I'll say, "Oh yeah, that year," and "Oh yeah, that year," and they've come a long way with the championship rings and how they look, and I can't wait till the next one.
Now that you mentioned all those wonderful championship years, and you've also glossed over some of the other ones in between. Over the past 25 years with the Galaxy, what are some of the events on or off the field that have impacted you the most?
Oh, there's a lot. To me, this type of interaction with you guys is big. The season ticket holder events is a big deal. I love that because I'm not having to worry about broadcasting the game. I can see you guys. I see the smiles on your faces. I can see, young fans. Some of you guys have kids, and I can see the kids that are excited about the team. And, having that opportunity is important. That's part of the community as far as I'm concerned. That's part of the larger family that is. You have the old school LA Galaxy logo on your shirt. You have the old school shirt on right now. I think that's the basketball shirt version. Obviously, I have the new one, or at least the one that we're wearing these days. Seeing all that and being able to just reminisce is an important part. In terms of events, I think even last year, I'll go back to last year, the win in Minnesota. To see the players that were just like, okay, the playoff win in Minnesota, we're moving forward here, and to see that monkey off their back and walking onto the plane, and we're usually one of the last people to walk on the plane. The players get on and coaches get on and so forth, and you just walk on the plane and you mind your own business, and you make it to the back of the plane, but you see guys that are smiling from ear to ear and had great performances and things like that. And that's what I take from it. The championships, the first championship in 2002, getting that done after losing 2001 in overtime to San Jose, and 99 we were outside. There was no room in the broadcast booth at Sullivan Stadium. So luckily it wasn't snowing, but it was rather cold, and we were outside, broadcasting outside. Doing it, Rick Davis and I. And then in 2002, we're back in Gillette. And again, there's no room in the broadcast booth the way that stadium is built. So we're doing it from behind the goal. And the championship goal comes as it's breaking out away from the goal that I'm broadcasting from. And Tyrone Marshall goes to that right side, and he's going away from me. And I can see Carlos Ruiz darting into the penalty area and waiting for that cross to come on in. That particular moment, and I kind of lost my mind on that one, and I think rightfully so. For a couple of years, the Galaxy allowed me to be their representative at the LA Sports Fans Choice Awards. I don't even know if that show is still going on, but for a couple of years, I was their representative, introducing them, and fortunately, both those times was for championships. 2005, they were not supposed to win, according to the smart people in the league, because they had a bad year and they made the playoffs, but they were the best team in the playoffs going into postseason play, and then going into Dallas. I mean, the stadium wasn't even done, and here you have one of the biggest iconic owners in all of sports, Lamar Hunt, as I'm the early bird getting into the stadium, and Mr. Hunt is there, and he's moving trash cans around, getting his stadium ready. That's seeing that happen. That was incredible. Calling Landon Donovan's 135 is something I'll cherish forever. Having the honor of doing that. Landon Donovan's first goal for the U.S. national team. I was in the right place at the right time with the USA's playing Mexico. We're doing that from the Coliseum. And Rick Davis and I are broadcasting that game on I think it was pay-per-view at the time. And we're broadcasting it from a camera well on the opposite side of the field. And we have bottles flying around. at us, and Landon scores right in front of me as he comes down. That's the way it was at the time, and Ridge Mahoney from Soccer America magazine, he's our sideline reporter at the time, and so that was in a moment. Getting the team that turned around in 2009, and getting to know Bruce Arena and knowing a certain version of Bruce Arena, having interviewed him on our soccer show and not having a very good impression of him, to understanding and learning the type of man that he is. And I'll tell you, he's a great guy. He's a great man. He's a very loyal man. And he was able to turn this club around and did it in 1 year. If you guys think about it, the Galaxy back line had two rookies on it in the championship. That was incredible. Bringing in Donovan Ricketts and all the ties the Galaxy had in that 2009 season, allowing for the rest of the team to catch up, and finally towards the backside of the year catching fire and getting their way into the playoffs and moving on to the championship there. That was incredible. And Ricketts was standing on his head all over the place for that team, and they were getting ties. I think it was 12 ties in a row, if I remember right. And then they caught fire. Having Landon Donovan come to play for the Galaxy, being able to call Kobe Jones's games, not only introduce him in 1996, but being able to call his games and now being able to broadcast with him. Two different Kobes for me. There was Kobe Jones, the player, and now Kobe Jones, the broadcast partner, Kobe Jones, the family man. Up until that point, the only thing I knew really about Kobe was the player, what he did for the national team, what he did for the LA Galaxy, and his parents that I would see after a game, and I would say hello to them. There's a lot of different things I guess I would take from that, but I think I would take your whole show at this point. Our new stadium. I remember when Tim Lywicki was in our broadcast booth at the Rose Bowl, and he was telling us, if you guys think Columbus Crew Stadium is great, you have no idea what's coming with this stadium that we're building. And I was like, really? Because again, you wonder how much people are going to invest in our game, and look at the type of money Mr. A did. Mr. Anschutz invested in a great facility that is still today top-notch facility in sports in this country. You can do anything out of that facility, which you cannot say for a lot of these new little smaller stadiums that are being built today.
You mean like 113 miles away?
Could be that. Could be. It's a little bit different. It has nice marble, but it's a little different than ours. Ours has trophies in it, which is great.
There you go.
Thank you for that soundbite.
Facts, guys.
Be nice.
I will. You mentioned broadcasting with Kobe Jones now. I gotta ask, do you guys rehearse? Did you give him any pointers when he's coming in? How's it working with Kobe?
No. Remember, Kobe was already doing games before he and I started working together. We didn't revert. I'll tell you right now what happened. I'll tell you how we actually worked our very first game. It was I was going to do a game in December for Spectrum Sportsnet or Time Warner at the time. And Kobe and I were going to do it together. And Kobe already knew that I was doing radio, of course, and he was doing TV. And I was nervous. I was driving up to LA, and my car broke down in Camp Pendleton, and I had to turn back home. And I had to go find my dad's old car that had been sitting in my parents' house in their driveway. And I said, okay, let me see if this makes it to LA. And got my butt up there, got up to LA, got out of the car, walked right straight into the booth, and Kobe, having not worked together, did a one half of the Galaxy game a cappella, just like that. And that was the very first game Kobe and I did together. What was surprising to me was the fact that, not knowing this, Kobe and I tend to see the game similarly, which that really makes for, in my opinion, a great team. And he really helps me along in being able to broadcast the game. We don't argue during the game. We may disagree here and there, but we never get into an argument in a game, and that's what keeps the game flowing, and that's a great thing.
So he's a natural on the field and off the field, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, Kobe's the Hall of Famer on and off the field. Absolutely.
Hey Joe, I got another question for you too, man. You've met so many people throughout your career, and I'm curious to know, have you ever been starstruck?
Um, I think the only time that I might have been a bit starstruck uh, was meeting Stevie Wonder, and it was at a Super
wow.
Bowl. It was the very first Super Bowl I ever covered, and it was in Atlanta. It was the Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl. It was they just opened the Georgia Dome at the time, so early '90s. It might have been the '93 Super Bowl or something like that. And back then, it's not like today. Radio Row was a big deal, and all of a sudden, there's this big old group coming our way, and we're part of the radio stations that are there, and there was maybe 50, and we thought that was a lot at the time, broadcasting there, and it was our turn to talk to this gentleman, and all of a sudden, out of the group, is Stevie Wonder dressed in this baby blue, I don't know what you want to call it, maybe it's a suit, whatever you want to call it, and he sits down on a 3-foot table right across from us, and I'm like, holy cow, you're Stevie Wonder. But that might have been the only one. I look at it more as being an honor. It's an honor that I've been able to broadcast games with, and meeting Kobe Jones and Landon Donovan and David Beckham. I mean, the one thing about David is this: what I take away is not all the games and all the fans going nuts for him. Is the effort that David made to be a normal person around people. He was the Beatles. Anywhere we went, people knew where the Galaxy were. The first game we played in New York, and I know a lot of you guys know about that, 64,000 people there at Giant Stadium. First game we played in New York was right after they changed the crest to the new crest. And, I was proud, and I wore my Galaxy polo on my flight, and I flew in, and at that point I was at a different hotel than the team. As I walked into the lobby, and this never happened, I walked into the lobby, I started hearing people saying the LA Galaxy's staying here. And that would never happen. And that's how I knew things changed in a big way. And David's last night, after he won the championship in 2012, I was fortunate enough to be at the post-game dinner and, just to say thank you. That type of thing. I don't know. I mean, getting to know Bruce Arena, getting to know, Siggy Schmidt, getting to work with Ralph Perez, who was the assistant coach under Siggy Schmidt, and he was with me on radio. Those guys. I mean, Thierry Henry. I called his games against the Galaxy. I called his games when he was playing with Barcelona. I called a game where Messi played against the Galaxy at the Rose Bowl. Ronaldo played against the Galaxy. I called 2 of those games. I think when you look back at all that stuff, and you guys are forcing me to look back, then I'm starting to pull stuff out from here and there. But I don't know. I was always brought up that I would speak to anybody like, hey, your name, and that's kind of how I was. I never asked for autographs. I never have. The only autographs I have are from Ted Williams, who went to my high school. I have a Galaxy. I have one Galaxy flag that's a team flag that's behind me. And I have 2 Hall of Fame baseballs that I, in my early broadcast career in the 90s, I became very good friends with Tony Gwynn. He was one of my best friends. And he brought me his Hall of Fame ball and Cal Ripken's Hall of Fame ball. Wow. And that's what I keep from a memorabilia type thing that it's autographed. So, and I wasn't starstruck by Tony. I was just like, hey, let's go. And I know a lot of people would be starstruck by him. I just, maybe I needed to respect him a little bit more, but I just wasn't brought up that way.
Hey, Joe, again, I want to thank you for being here and answering all our questions. But we got some fans that wanted to ask you some questions as well. Sure. So we had a question sent in from Luis Alvarez. He wants to know. He wants to ask: first generation of Galaxy fans compared to the second generation of fans. So I guess he's trying to say the Beckham effect,
Yeah.
pre-Beckham, post Beckham. What's the change you've seen in fans?
Well, I think the MLS 1.0 or Galaxy 1.0, I guess in this case, there was a very more it was more familiar, more of a family ownership type of thing with the players. Um, when David came, it became more of I don't want to say corporate, but it was an explosion. And you cannot have that type of interaction anymore because of what might filter in. And so that kind of changed things. So what some of that good happened, the explosion of positive, it took away the closeness that I think fans were able to have on a regular basis with the team. You'd be able to touch them, you'd be able to know them personally. Some players were still that way, but when David came in, things changed in the league. The car got new wheels on it. I mean, it was a whole different story with David. I say this, I've said this before. David opened the door for the types of players that we're getting today in this league. Before we had the retirement league talk about and all that stuff, but David came here. He was 31, going to be 32. Robbie Keane was 31. Thierry Henry still had meat on the bone when he played and played well when he was here in Major League Soccer. The players that are coming in now, look at what David's doing in Miami with the players he's bringing in there. Higuain, look at what the Galaxy are doing with Pavon, 23 years old, and we know this guy can play at the highest level. Chicharito, who is here now, he's 31 years old. He still has meat on the bones. Jonathan Dos Santos, a young player, if you think about it at this point. He's still right in the prime of his league, of his career. So all this stuff happened because of David coming here and not doing what a lot of other stars had done here in Major League Soccer, which was go on vacation. David came here and wanted to win. He understood what it was. He was professional all the way through, and that created the opportunity to get the right type of players to come to this country, and we're seeing that now. Right. And I know I'm long-winded with all you guys. I apologize.
No worries.
No, better them to hear you than us.
Yes.
Right, so we get a question we had submitted on Instagram from Rock RDA. He asked, is there a play or something that happened during the game that left you speechless?
Well, I wasn't speechless during Zlatan's first goal. Thank goodness. And fortunately, I was lucky that I got all those correct, because I would hate to have those type of moments not recorded properly by me. That would be a stain on the moment, I think. The speechless part was the 2014 final, the win. That's the one that caught me. That's the one that I kind of just stopped for a moment. And it was in our building. The fans were going crazy. And it wasn't that I wanted to take in the moment. It was more I just lost my air. I just kind of was out, and I had to catch myself a little bit. Because the voice was screeching, and it's like, okay, hold on, get a hold of yourself. That would be the one. I think I was a little nervous for Landon's 135 because you knew it was such a big moment, and we just didn't know when it was going to happen. And the way it happened in that match, if you look at the play, you think Robbie Keane's going to score, and he decides to play it across, and there's Landon to knock it home. And fortunately for me, it came out well. To me, sometimes I'll lose description of a play when something unorthodox happens, something really weird happens. Steve Jolly passing the ball back to Kevin Hartman, and the ball hits a divot in the field, and unfortunately Kevin can't find it, and it turns into the goal. Robin Fraser being taken out, separated his shoulder in that game, and in the Galaxy were down, probably the best defender in the league that year. Things like that they get me to pause a little bit. Unfortunately, the loss in San Jose. I mean, the playoff loss in San Jose. I can tell you right now, back in those days, that game was on Hispanic television, and our English broadcast was the SAP on that. And we would send our broadcast down to the truck, and they would pick it up, and we would be the English part. And so at halftime, the Galaxy are well in control of that. And I remember Doug Hamilton coming up to the booth, and we're talking about it, and we're saying, well, they're going from here, they're going to go right to Kansas City and all this other stuff. And next thing I know, all of us, things changed. Things changed in a bad way. And the Galaxy were put in a bad position. San Jose, you have to tip your cap to them, and they got the victory. I think that was probably one of those times that you really think about the words that are coming out of your mouth, and you want to get it right and not offensive. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
And then we got them back by stealing Donovan.
There you go.
We have Plastic Will 1996 asks, who will win in a wrestling fight, Tutino or God? But then he corrects himself and says, trick question, Tutino is God.
No. That would be blasphemy. But thank you. We all know it's a lot of time.
Oh, see, now I gotta catch my breath. To live and die in LA from Twitter, he says he would like to hear Joe's thoughts on how far MLS has come in 25 years, and where do you see the league in 10 to 20 years?
As far as I'm concerned, I think the league is on par with all the other major leagues in this country, in terms of the production, in terms of the quality, in terms of what you see in the stadiums, in terms of the marketing, in terms of, you look around Dignity Health Sports Park and how it's made up. You can walk into an NFL stadium and you say, okay, that's no different. Look at what happens in Atlanta. As far as I'm concerned, Atlanta United has a more consistent draw of a near sellout fan than the Atlanta Falcons. Think about that. The Atlanta Hawks have been there forever. And Atlanta United actually is talked about in that city, and the Falcons are not. So, excuse me, the Hawks are not. So, that's what I look at, what's happening. I know we don't like to talk about it too much, but we have a situation here that, market number 1 and market number 2 have 2 major teams playing in them in their own facilities. New York still needs to get theirs, but they're not playing in the same facility for the sake of argument. And they draw well at Yankee Stadium. Red Bull still needs to do a little better job. On a given night in Los Angeles, let's say it's a Saturday night with both teams home, you got over 40,000 people going to a soccer game. In Los Angeles, with the Dodgers could be playing as well. That says a lot as far as I'm concerned. That is something that the mainstream media today can't take away from you guys or any soccer fans anymore. So they might be able, they may not even give us a highlight on the local news channel. But the fact of the matter is there's 40,000 people that should be their audience that they're neglecting. And that's what I think where we are in 25 years in. In the next 10 years, with the type of ownership we have in this league, I believe that this league will be able to compete for maybe not the number 1 transfers, but 2s and 3s and 4s. They'll be able to compete for those guys in the next 10 to 20 years. First, inside the next 10 years, not even the next 20 years, inside the next 10 years. Why? Because the checks don't bounce.
I like that. Joe Galactic wants to know, Joe, what's your favorite jersey from '96 till now?
I like this one. I like the jersey the Galaxy are wearing these days. Not necessarily the different schemes or the 25th anniversary one or the one that was 2 years ago or whatever. I like this color scheme. I like this crest best of all. I like the Quasar. That's my favorite of them. But I will say this. I believe it was the 97 team that had the stripes, the green with the black stripes. Yeah. I always liked that jersey. But you can't say anything about the teal and yellow because you won your first championship with that, right? And this one, the one that you're wearing right now, the old school 96 jersey, you look at it and say that's the first. So you got to respect that. But ultimately, I think this is the one that they have currently, in terms of the color scheme, there's my dog walking behind me. This color scheme and the logo and so forth is the one that I think can take it into the future. There's no rebranding in my thought going forward.
Yeah, I hope not, because I have it permanently on my skin. I don't want to do it again. And last question from LA native: what was the funniest thing or prank you've witnessed around the squad? And he goes on by saying his favorite was AJ's continuing plastic coyote prank on Surricate.
I think that might be the best one. I think when I go to training, it's been pretty professional all the way around. The times that I'm in the hotel with the players, I don't get a chance to see a lot of that stuff that goes on. So I'm a little at a loss there. I'm on the outside of that circle. Let's put it that way. I'm in the circle, but I'm not in that circle.
You know what, Joe? You need to pull a prank on Kobe Jones and come back and tell us about it.
Yeah. No, because you know what? The payback will be worse, and I don't want to have to deal with it.
That does it for the fan questions. And again, Joe, I want to thank you here for joining us. It's our honor to have you on here. I don't know if these guys have anything else to add before we end the interview.
Joe, I'm just very appreciative for you joining us again today. I was telling the guys before you came on, I was like, remember, we're having a conversation with him. Don't think of it as an interview. It's just a conversation. And to me, those are the best ones. I have a lot of journalism experience, and the guys were saying, don't get nervous. And I was like, I always get a little nervous before every interview, just because it's just something that I go through. And but in the end, there've been times when I have had interviews or conversations with people throughout the years that I can honestly say it feels like you're walking in from a winter storm and you're sitting down by the nice little hearth. It's warm, and you're sitting there with a cup of hot chocolate, and you can just sit there, relax, and feel that warmth, and you're home. And listening to your voice during Galaxy broadcast, it feels like home. And so I wanted to thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to many more memories of you and Kobe. And hopefully, we get to hear another championship this year. Hopefully.
I hope so. Listen, listen. It's an honor for me to be in the position that I am, and I can tell you real quickly here about MLS 1.0 to 2.0. It was an honor for me to be in that position also, 1.0. And there were colleagues of mine that really didn't care and kind of ridiculed it and whatever. And what are you talking about, this, that, the other? And I'm happy to say that honor is still there, and I still get the opportunity to do it week in and week out, or every 4 days right now in 2020 as the league gets back underway. And to be able to service you guys and to be that voice is probably something that I'll take with me, hopefully, to the gates of St. Peter's and beyond. It's a big deal for me. I don't take any game lightly, and the last thing I would want to ever do is embarrass you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, seriously, thank you, Joe. Thank you for everything, man. Thank you for giving us some time.
My pleasure. I talked your ear off. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. I'll repeat it again. Better you than us. But yeah, so we're pretty much going to wrap this up. And I can't say thank you enough, Joe. But do you got any messages for Galaxy fans that might be listening?
I would say that, hey, listen, we're all going through a weird time. And we're thinking about you guys. And, can't wait to see you back in the stadium in your seats, singing along as the game progresses. And I think one of the things we take from this is the unfortunate thing that we didn't take for granted on purpose, but we have been forced into realizing how important it is for all of us to be together. And hopefully that'll happen soon.
I think we're good with that.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Sounds good, man.
All right,
thank you, Joe.
All right, my pleasure.